Justin Borgman from Hadapt joins us today for Big Data on Brews. Justin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Please introduce your brew and then yourself and your company.
Sounds good. So this is a beer called Greens Double Dark Ale. It's actually gluten-free, so I'm sure that I'm the first one on this show that is a gluten-free person. I've actually been gluten-free for about 12 years. I was sort of diagnosed with an allergy, and I like to think of myself as a trendsetter. Now it's cool, right? Gluten-free is cool. And everybody's gluten-free. But
well, so we will feel good drinking that beer today then, huh?
Yes, exactly.
It's a healthy beer. Healthier than all the others. Great. Oh, this is one of those.
Did it get shaken up a little bit?
Yeah. We had one explode with Michael Steck, actually. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, Justin, what's Hadapt doing?
So, Hadapt, we've been around about 3 years now, and we are basically building an analytical database on top of Hadoop. So, if you're familiar with this whole SQL on Hadoop space, right? No, you've never heard of it?
This must be something new.
Yeah. Well, not that new anymore now. But we like to think of ourselves as kind of the pioneers of that space way back 3 years ago, based on some research in the Yale Computer Science Department. So my co-founder is Daniel Abadi, who's a professor there, whose prior research actually led to the founding of Vertica before becoming a professor. And so effectively, we've built this platform on top of Hadoop. It sits on top of the Hadoop distribution and allows you to work with data inside of Hadoop using SQL.
Yeah. And literally on top, or?
Well, sort of embedded inside of it. So we like to think of... This will be a chance to draw.
Yeah.
We like to think of Hadoop as sort of the operating system for us. And it has all that fault tolerance and sort of resource management and so forth. And we work with any of the distributions. So just like there's different distros of Linux, obviously different distros of Hadoop. And then Hadapt installs on top of that. And effectively what we're doing is you've already got HDFS as part of Hadoop, certainly. But we actually add a relational database component. That's one of the things that makes us very unique architecturally. Hopefully I can spell here on the fly. So what that does is that allows us to basically leverage relational database technology, which is more mature and has a lot of advantages from a performance standpoint in terms of indexing and so forth, and leverage that as a part of the platform. And then we've got our own sort of SQL query engine up here that allows you to query that data in SQL. You can query both data inside of HDFS and also data in this sort of relational store.
And did you rewrite those parts? One of the challenges that I think we see is that some folks trying to reinvent the wheel with SQL and Hadoop, right? So in one really interesting observation, it looks like your RDBMS is not sitting on top of HDFS, right? So if you think about other SQL-related things, and they're usually super slow because HDFS is a sequential optimized file system. This is more kind of a B-tree, random access. So your RDBMS is not on top of HDFS. Do I understand that right?
It's not really on top of HDFS. It is certainly installed in the same data nodes.
Yeah.
But to your point, this is written in C. This is optimized, and therefore you get a lot of those advantages.
So you by far the fastest SQL on top of Hadoop then?
We certainly think so, yeah.
Let's get in that conversation. Who is the biggest, fastest, and so on? No.
That would be a good benchmarking exercise, which certainly some of our customers have done. But we think that we are the fastest and also the most mature, because it turns out it's really hard to build a database, right? And to your point, I think a lot of the open source vendors are trying to reinvent the wheel, and that means adding a lot of database features sort of from scratch and building them within that platform. Whereas we're able to bring a lot more to the table, and we've been working on this a lot longer. So our query engine is more mature, the optimizer is more mature, more SQL support, more optimizations built into that query engine.
Cool. Let's try this beer.
Okay. Cheers. So what do you think for a gluten-free beer?
It's good. I definitely, some folks bring like pale ales or IPAs. I'm not a big fan, but I like the dark beers. That's good. I didn't even know there's gluten in beer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Well, that feels good. let's have more gluten-free beer. So tell me a little bit about the history of the company, right? So you guys all started together at which university?
Yale University. And yeah, I was actually in business school at the time. I was a software engineer before business school. But while I was there, I happened to meet a few folks in the computer science department, Daniel being one of them, Camille being another one. Was Daniel's PhD student, who's also my co-founder. And they had this really interesting research that was called Hadoop DB. And that was this idea of basically taking a lot of the lessons learned from C-Store and Vertica. C-Store was the paper that became Vertica. And trying to apply them to the Hadoop world, which was at that time still emerging. So he wrote this paper in 2009, and we incorporated it in 2010. And effectively, trying to bring some of that performance and functionality to this platform, and also make it more accessible. And I think that's one area where you and I certainly agree is how can we make this more usable for enterprise customers, not just the really smart guys at Facebook, for example. So. So that was what was attractive to me when I read this paper. I sort of got to know them. We hit it off really well. I was, an MBA student, so they were initially viewed me with skepticism. Yeah.
Do you have sneakers?
Right.
Somewhere?
Exactly. But it worked out well, and we decided we were going to go for it and commercialize this. And so we went through the licensing process with the university. There were, a number of patents pending on that technology at the time, and so secured that, raised some money, and ended up moving to Boston. So we're the Hadoop company of Boston.
How many big data companies are in Boston?
So
Vertica used to be there, right?
Vertica, yeah. And actually,
it's still there.
It's still there, yeah. Part of HP now. It's a great database town. Netezza is another great example, which IBM acquired. Certainly there was Endeca, which Oracle acquired. And then a number of startups, actually. The big data scene in Boston has really blossomed, I'd say, in the last 2 years. It's a great town. When we started in New Haven, Connecticut, we knew we kind of had to move somewhere to build this company. And we debated, Silicon Valley or Boston, but we felt like Boston had a lot of advantages to it just in terms of the infrastructure engineering talent that is abundant there. And I don't have to compete with Google and Facebook like I'm sure you do here.
Yeah. So. Well, we actually don't have engineers in Silicon Valley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
We have engineers in New York and Germany.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we have a few engineers here, and we have services and sales and marketing. But yeah, exactly, right? Building a technology startup and hiring a whole bunch of engineers in Silicon Valley is a money game, right? And if you're trying to build a lean startup, you don't want to play that game.
Yeah.
Right? You will not outcompete Google in salaries.
Right.
So that's why, it's a globalized environment, right? So we're trying to build a global company.
Very cool.
It's fun.
Yeah. What part of Germany?
So close to Berlin.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where my old company was. And it's a small university town called Halle. We have 6 universities within 200 kilometers. So that is, that's for us kind of the really nice hub. 1,700 years town. A lot of chateaus. And
yeah, I'm sure it's beautiful.
25% students. Check it out, Halle.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and then how big you guys now? Like how many engineers you have in Boston?
So we have about 30 engineers just in Boston.
Wow.
And then we actually have a small office in Poland, interestingly, which actually goes back to our initial founding. When we first started, we were sort of struggling to find good people in New Haven. And one of my co-founders, Kamil, is Polish. So these were guys he knew, and we sort of kept that office. So we've got about 10 people in Warsaw.
Cool. Also nice city.
Yeah. Not as quite as nice architecturally, perhaps, as others, but no, it's an awesome city, and I've been over there a couple times.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now you're 3 years old. You build the technology, and help me to your experience as an entrepreneur. How is it bringing this to market, and what are the things, the learnings, and where's the technology most? Where's it resonating the most?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I would say, first of all, and I'd be curious if you agree with me on this, but it's been an overwhelming learning experience.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I've really enjoyed that process. It sort of makes me, want to do it again at some point in the future, just to leverage everything that I've learned so far.
Well, see all the gray hairs.
Yeah.
Think about that twice.
Yeah. But it's been wonderful. I mean, I think the market is so robust for what we're doing right now, and so hot, and there's so much interest. A lot of people sort of have these visions of being able to move away from legacy, Teradata environments or what have you, and go to Hadoop. And certainly Hadoop can't do all those things yet today, but that kind of vision, that future, I think is exciting to people, and it's great to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how did you guys bring your product to the market? So you said you work with all the different Hadoop distributions. Are those guys reselling? You selling this directly? How, help me to...
Good question. So if our relationship was, on a Facebook page, it'd be it's complicated with some of those, because when it started out, certainly we were very good partners, and we're very complementary to what they do. Obviously, now some of these distributions have started to introduce their own SQL on Hadoop offerings, right, like Impala and so forth. So, so now we still run on those distributions, but we sort of co-optate with them, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So
you basically have your own folks that bring it to your customers, and your customers download a trial, or they call you up, want to try it. How can I try your software?
Yeah, so you would call us up, or fill out the contact form online, and then we'll work with you to do a trial. We give you an evaluation agreement, let you work with the software, and hopefully do a proof of concept that ultimately goes well and ends up with you wanting to buy the software.
Okay. So no online trial or download or something? We
don't have like a free download at this point. We've been thinking about ways to perhaps create like a sandbox online that people could work with in a virtualized environment. So that's something we may do. But up to this point, it's been more reaching out to us and then working with customers.
So what are the use cases that people implementing then with where are you seeing your technology being very strong, right? So SQL, structured data, so the classical use case for, log file analytics, quote unquote, in Hadoop. Maybe help me to contrast that. Why would I say I really want to have this Hadapt thing?
Yeah, so I don't know if we have an eraser or...
no, we basically, I just do that. Yeah, well, we should note to self, get an eraser.
So all I was going to say here is, the way we look at it, there's certainly the spectrum of structured and unstructured data, right? Yeah. And SQL on Hadoop is largely, I think, about the structured data and how can you sort of do these structured, SQL traditional workloads on structured data, and certainly that is where we began. Yeah. But where we've evolved is by allowing enterprise users to actually query kind of this entire spectrum. So in addition to SQL, we added full text search that kind of works more on this end of the spectrum. Yeah. And then we just introduced a feature in version 2 of our software back in September that we call schemaless SQL, which is basically the ability to query semi-structured data like JSON or XML, so key value data. Okay. And you can query that directly.
And is that more kind of an XPath query language then, or for JSON, or is that still straight SQL?
It's straight SQL. So what we actually do is, and don't ask me too many questions on how this works, or I'll have to get one of the engineers involved. But
we just call them in.
It's all magic. No, so basically what we do is we take the key value pairs in the JSON data and we materialize them as in a tabular format. So the keys become treated like columns. So you can continue to query using SQL, JSON, XML, etc., even as that schema is changing. So you don't have to change your ETL process. There's no real ETL process per se, or it's sort of happening automatically in a way. And also, you don't have to change the schema of your database because we're sort of automatically materializing that. So you may change your JSON, add a new attribute to your JSON file, and now that's immediately queryable automatically. So we did that because, to answer your question about use cases, we found a lot of customers that want to do analytics on JSON XML data, whether that's clickstream data or some kind of event log data, or data coming from a key value store like a Mongo or HBase, what have you. And so this was kind of a easier way to allow them to query that directly. I could talk about one customer that example. So this is a customer actually in Boston that I really think they have a pretty cool business. It's called Objective Logistics. And what they do is they take point of sale data from restaurants and bars, and they take the receipt data, the check data, and they basically use that data and analyze that data to determine the best wait staff in the restaurant and the bar. So you know, who's selling the most, you know, what sort of margin items are they selling? You know, some items are higher margin than others. What kind of tip are they getting? And they stack rank these folks. And then they do a couple of things with that. First of all, they actually reveal it to everyone in the restaurant. So there's sort of some inherent competition. You want to be, you know, the top
gamified.
Gamifying it, exactly. That's exactly right. And then secondly, the people that are at the top actually get rewarded by choosing their shifts first. And if you work in a shift-based business, you know, especially in the restaurant industry, it's important. Exactly. So that's a case where all that data is stored in JSON. It's coming from these point of sale systems, and it's changing all the time. Every restaurant's a little bit different. Every point of sale system's a little bit different. So being able to have that flexibility is important.
Cool. That's interesting.
Yeah.
In what kind of the industries you guys seeing? I mean, so we see a lot of financial services, telco, retail. The new thing is kind of optimizing production systems, so lean production based on big data. Do you guys have hotspots in certain verticals where you see, 90% of our customers in the retail business or in the you guys have that?
I would say the top three for us are sort of what I'll call internet, which is a lot of SaaS-based businesses doing funnel analysis and that sort of thing. Retail is certainly one as well, and then financial services around security use cases, fraud detection, that sort of thing.
Interesting. Okay, cool. And what's kind of the deployment sizes you guys see with your technology?
It ranges quite a bit, actually, right? From everything from like 5 or 6 nodes, perhaps, or even in EC2. We see a lot of our customers deploy this in Amazon.
We don't see that at all.
Really?
Interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say. I would say that the majority might still be actually on premise, but we do see certainly within the kind of trend. As a trend, more and more people using Amazon, and then. Deployment size, was the question. So, all the way up to a couple hundred nodes so far. The interesting thing is because we price on a per node basis, certainly customers, very smartly decide to sort of build beefier nodes in some of those on-premise situations. But
interesting. Well, so we price on data. Right, so
data ingestion or
data ingestion. So
kind of like a Splunk model.
Yeah, exactly. Right, where it's more about we don't care how many users you have. We don't care if you have 10 or 500 machines. Right, and the beauty is we see really high ROIs around even like a 10-node Hadoop cluster. Right, the success of your Hadoop or big data strategy isn't related to the size of your Hadoop cluster. Right. Funnily enough, the engineers always measuring themselves with the size of the Hadoop cluster. I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
But okay, cool. So what's is there anything you really excited about in the market? What's next? I mean, is Yarn playing an important role for you guys?
It will. That's something we've certainly been paying a lot of attention to, and I think that's something that we will be leveraging very soon. So that's certainly one thing. I think it's just exciting to watch the market continue to evolve and watch more and more people move from kind of experimental mode into production mode. And that's what's very exciting for us. And that's where we think our value prop sort of is more appealing. I'd imagine you probably feel the same way. We don't find too many customers that want to just sort of run Hadoop in the lab and want Hadapt for that. It's more that when they go to that next step of, okay, now we want to actually use Hadoop in a real production case, how can we make it kind of more accessible and usable and build applications against it and so forth.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's have another drink of the gluten-free beer. And we will be back next week with the next episode of Big Data and Brews. Cheers.
Cheers.